Morning. I'm here to expand a little bit on some of the JSX in TTBG stuff that I had mentioned in my previous video. Tradition dictates that I say link in the description. I'll try to remember to put it there. So I wanted to kind of go through and actually create a UI element in video form so that you can see how the JSX actually functions in a semi-practical use case, and B, I never really talked about composition of custom components, and I think that's actually one of the big things that JSX lets you do in the context of TTPG, or really in any use case of it, but details. So I've got here a project that I started with create TTPG package with a TSX template. Again, previous video if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Let's see. I've got my project already set up. I have JSX and TTPG already as a dependency. And yeah. So I'm actually going to add a library of mine that is freely available. You can just add it to your project as well if you want some already pre-built components that I will also be adding to. UI. Cool. So now that I have that, I'm actually going to ditch the hello world script. I'm actually going to delete it in the scripts folder as well, just because I don't want that leaking, just in case. And I'm going to create... my game plan here is to actually create a pretty generic UI here. The intent of it is to be a event bus triggering mechanism. So like, my thought process here is that it'll have a bunch of controls, kind of like a soundboard, but not necessarily for triggering sounds, but for triggering effects that you might hook up via scripting in your setup. One example that I'm thinking about using is for my terrain pack. I'm going to have lights on it, so I can have those lights listen to an event from the controller, and then the controller can be like, turn these lights on, turn these lights off, etc., etc. So I kind of want to make a generic controller panel type deal. For those of you who are into train modeling, this is just kind of like your control board or whatnot, just kind of an effects control board. Limited use case, but like, it's kind of neat, I think. And also it should let us have a neat little time in creating a fairly complex UI. So let me dive in here for a minute. Now, this is not strictly necessary, but I always do this. I always wrap my stuff in a closure that I then immediately invoke. And I don't know why I do this, it's just a habit I've gotten into. It's not strictly necessary, but it helps me, I don't know, it's like a simulated main function, I guess you could call it. It's like a primary entry point. It's a weird little thing. Anyways, so let me create a UI here. I know I'm going to need a switcher and a couple other things, so let's just do new UI element, and let's just add UI. And I know I'm going to do UI.presentation style equals because I always do that apparently. Anchor X is 0.5. Anchor Y equals, I'm actually going to do 0. No, I want it to be 1 so that it expands upwards. UI.position equals new vector 0, 0. I think 20 is what I tend to do that as. Control-Shift-I to import a vector, thank you. And UI dot two-sided is useless. Use transparency. I always set. Well, I try to set to true, unless there's an actual big performance reason that I don't do that, but that's not even right there. Cool. So let's do a widget. Equals render. And I know the first thing that I want is actually a switcher. There we go. I import JSX into TPG, and I know I'm going to need a ref for that. I will make it default to the default value is 0, so I can leave that be, and I'm going to create my ref here. Or does this mean switcher ref? Ref widget switcher. Cool. And you'll see what that's about in just a minute. Image button URL equals icons, and this is a neat little thing that I've power? Is that where it is? Action. The icons object should come from. There it is. Yeah, okay, so icons, actions, power. I've got a list of icons that, let me actually just pull it up here. Index, there it is, icons. So these are a bunch of icon URLs that I have hosted on this Git, so I can use them in any package or UI that I write, so that I can just keep it consistent without having to actually burden down the package with the UI elements. And they're on a Git, so it's like they'll always be there. Unlike hosting on something like Imgur or something. And I'm always adding to this list as I need more icons, but these are some of the ones that I have already. So I'm using this one. And if I show it to you, it's probably not going to show up very well because it's white. Yeah. And there is a reason why it is white, so that I can tint it. So we got that. On click equals open. We'll do open dialog. And then I need to write that function. Dialog equals image button p player. Yep. I think that's all the parameters that takes. Not that I actually need any of them, because I can do main switcher ref dot current. If it is set, then we set active index to 1. Set active index, thank you. Const close dialog equals L dot. You know what? I'm just gonna. Don't even need that, because then I can call that without parameters, because I don't need them. And I can just do that universally. Cool. So now we get to the fun part. The fun part being, I think it's dialogue? You know, okay. We're gonna actually restart the TS server so it actually picks up IntelliSense on that package, because that's annoying. There we go, modal. Now this is a component that I have written that lets you, basically it's just a whole bunch of widgets that's already pre-composed. I I need an onClose equals close dialog, and that says when the close button is clicked, run this function, which will change the switcher back to the image, and all good. What other properties are on here? Children, footer, menu, title. Let's put a title on here. Downloadable. Let's do controller. And we'll just put a hi. Because, I mean, yay. Let's see what this looks like in game. Right there. In fact, let's do... Now whenever I save the script, it'll actually transpile live. So I'm in TTPG. I can edit this package. And I've already got a test thing. I always use station because it's got the nicest reflections. Okay. Oh, you know what would help? If I actually add it to the object. That would help. Oh, there it is. Huh. 20 was way too high. Oh, that's right. Always half scale. I mean, that's still gonna be... Now I should be able to do that, and... Sure. Whatever. That, and there's our little tiny modal. And just with this one component, I have all this stuff. It's got a close button that does the thing. It's got the title already baked into it, and then it takes whatever children and puts it in the dialog box. So we can do something like, let's do a vertical box. And for the first one, we'll do a horizontal box. And then we'll do a, let's do an image button. And we'll use the same icons.actions.power. Width 16, because it's going to default to 64, because that's the size of the icon, so I want this to be relatively small. And yeah. Yep, and there's my little power button. Of course it doesn't do anything. That's okay. So, something's beeping. I don't know what's beeping. Something in the background is beeping. If you can hear that, sorry. I don't know what it is. Okay. Let's do a... yeah, let's do a slider. Value equals 0. Is there min equals 0? Max equals 1. Is there a step? There is 0.01. Input width equals 0. I don't want, well, let's see how that looks. We're just gonna save, reload. Ah ha ha. Need to wrap this in a box child with a weight of 1 so that it takes up the entire width, and neat. Wish it didn't have that box show up. I don't know what that is. That's gonna drive me buggo. Alright, so we got that. Interesting that the step is 0.01, but the oh, see, the input is too small. That makes sense. Let's do 64. I mean, that's nice, but... Okay. Do I have a frame here? That's okay. Layout. We'll wrap everything here in a layout. Max. Now let's do a... Let's just be explicit. Height equals 320. Width equals 640. Let's do 480. That's apparently a good aspect ratio. I mean, that's huge in-game, but whatever. Okay, so we got our first slider. Awesome. So I'm thinking like analog inputs and digital inputs and touch inputs. We'll just do a cluster of those and it'll be fine. All right. So we got this, which essentially is, I'm thinking like a lock or a mute. Like, do I have a lock button? I don't think I have a lock button. Yeah, I don't yet, but I can add one. It's fine. And I kind of want to do an input for the sake of a label. The idea there is that you can rename this channel if you want to. Obviously, I need to do a box child. This is going to be wrong. Yeah, see, it's going to share the same width as that, and that's not good. So we'll do a layout width equals 128. And that's going to yell at me because it doesn't like that as a... Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I'm thinking like you can have a label to indicate what this is, and then when this changes, it'll fire an event and other scripts can pick it up. And I'm thinking the power button is like a lock disable type deal, so in case, you know, kind of a don't do the thing. So we will do a on click lock input, and yes, I'm doing this a little bit wrong intentionally. You'll see what I mean in just a second. And we'll need a slider. We'll need to ref the slider. So let me get a slider ref slider. There we go. Slider ref dot current set enabled. I mean, yes, I'm negating it twice. Don't ask. We'll need to ref this as well. Lock button, ref. I'm getting a little heavy with my references, but honestly, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It helps when it gets composed into a subcomponent, which you'll see. We'll do lock button ref dot current set tint color. If disabled, CLR red, else CLR blue. And we'll do that, and we will add those as constants. 0.7511. Port color, thank you. CLR red, we'll do this as 125 0.25. Sure, why not? And then that's disabled, and then enabled. Just like a mute button, I guess, kind of thing. Probably not that necessary, and honestly, I'll probably change the order of that so that it's down at the end. Cool. So I could go here and take all this and copy and paste, except it's going to yell at me because those refs are no longer going to point to the same component. You usually want, in fact, you always want one ref per component. So like when it goes to render, it'll go through all this and be like, here's a ref, let me set this ref current to this component, and then it'll come down here and be like, oh, let me set this ref to this component, so you'll lose the connection to this one. It's not necessarily good. In fact, it's never good. So, I mean, you could sit here and write all the refs for all the components, but, like, why? So, I'm going to do this, create a new folder, create a new script called analog.tsx. And we'll need to add parameters to that at some point. But I'm just going to copy this and just have that return. And it's going to yell at me because of a lot of missing stuff, and that's okay. We're just going to take this, shove those refs in there. Let's take this, shove those in there. Take this, shove that there. Import everything that's missing. There we go. And we can just take this and do analog input. In fact, now I can take this out. I can take this out. I can take these out. And we're good. And it still works. So there's my composed component. It is the same thing, but now I can do, let's say I want 5 of them. Ta-da! And they all act independently. Now, obviously this isn't a very pretty thing, but that's okay. Also, I know that when I go to fire these events, I'm probably going to want to be able to differentiate them. So, how do I do that? Well, I could give this an input parameter. Oh. So, I'm going to get an ID. In fact, let's call it input ID. Let's actually call it input ID. And that's going to be a string. And then I can take this and put input ID. And it's going to yell at me because now that's a required component. Or a required property of that. There we go. Now they're all independent, and that means now I can not only do I have a differentiation of what this is, but let's do value is label state, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I can set this to something inside so that if I load something from the saved JSON of the object, I can inject it in here instead of passing it as a prop. It's a whole thing. You'll see what I mean. Let's actually do on commit, change, handle label change. We'll write that function real quick. And I can never remember what the syntax for this is, but it's L text. So many things in the way. Is it text box? Text box. Player. Okay. Player. String. I think that's the... fairly certain that's it. If I delete this, what is... Ugh. Element player text hard commit. Okay, yeah. So Not that I actually use it, but I'll throw it in there just to be explicit. And yeah, it's kind of weird because it'll change by its, like the internal state of the input will change on its own, and it's not like making this is a difference. But when you go to store the information in the save state, it's kind of easier to be like, well, now I can just, you know, save data, whatever. I can just do label state, and that got updated whenever that on commit fires. So it's just easier to chuck something into an internal state instead of handling all the weird things like that. So I tend to always put my refs and state stuff up top, and then I do my handlers, and then I actually do my components. Personal preference. Okay, so now this handles the label change, then that actually does anything, but you know, that's okay. Let's see, what else? I mean, I also need to do the same thing with the input, actual input value. We'll get to that in a second. We'll also need to do that, but that's okay. Okay. I mean, that's good enough for right this minute. All right. Let's do... Oh, right. Layout only takes one child. So let's actually wrap this in a horizontal box, because then I can't wait for grid layout. Okay, horizontal box. Let's do button, and the URL will just be icons dot actions dot, I don't know, add. Why not? Width. You know what? We can actually leave that as the default size. Oop. Refresh that, and oh, hello. I can never remember. Do I need that to be there, or should I put it on the? Yeah, I need to actually put it on the. No? Oh. I'm silly. My bad. Okay. Also, image button isn't actually a thing. It needs to be the lowercase version. I don't know where that came from. It's not actually a widget. There we go. Okay, so yeah, that mistake I just made. Image button needs to be lowercase because it's a default component. They need to be uppercase when they are a component that has been composed. So like all the vanilla widgets have a lowercase alias. This will work. That will not. And the reason for that is because that's not actually a JSX function. That is TTPG's default widget. Or not default, but that is the actual widget class. And you can't actually do that. If we actually go into the JSX and TTPG library, will this be a mess if I do this? Probably. Yeah, this will be a mess. Okay, so yeah, this canvas, whatever. So yeah, it's actually like, where's my image? Image button element. What it actually does is it instantiates the element and then returns it, but it's actually a function. So every composed element here is actually a function. A somewhat specifically formatted function, which is why you see me do this. It takes a single argument, which is an object, and the object contains all the attributes that you put in. So like, if I have, in fact, it is customary to put analog input props type analog input props equals this. And then I can do props dot input ID. That's another pattern there. I prefer just deconstructing it right in the beginning so that I can put a default value if I want. And we'll get to that in a second. So there's that. Okay. Now let's do. Ooh. Const handle input commit equals L slider the player I think it's a number. Like probably a number. Where is it? On change. You'll notice that there's actually on change and on change actual. On change actual will always fire at the same time as on change. In fact, it's the same function. The difference between on change and on change actual is on change actual might have a player that is undefined. So like this variable is actually potentially undefined. And the primary reason for that is because on change actual will fire when you programmatically set the value. So like if in my label change I set the value to something, on change actual will fire, but on change will not. On change only fires when the user does something. So it is better, I think, to always use on change. That is the syntax, right? Come on, give me the, there we go. Yeah, value number. Handle input commit. And then we can kind of just get console log v command. Is that on change? Does slider have an on commit? Ugh. No, it does not have an on commit. Interesting. So we're just gonna get spammed. Oh, we're gonna get so spammed. Oh, good. Okay, so it on change is actually on commit, and there is no event for in the midst of changing. That's actually a good thing, I think. Nope. Ooh, you know what would actually be good? Let's do this. Image button color. We don't need color. We don't actually need a ref either. Icons dot arrows dot. Let's do caret down with equals 16. Otherwise, it'll be giant. And we'll do the same thing, but caret up. So these two functions, go min input equals L is the image button. P is the player that did it, and V, there is no value associated with it. And we'll do the same thing here. So it's funny, this is actually a good use case for where you might want on change actual, because I could do the slider ref dot current dot set value. In fact, technically what I should do is slider ref dot current. Technically what I should do is the min equals slider ref dot current dot get min value if the min is not equal undefined, or I could throw a default in here. I'll probably do that. So this could be undefined, like slider_ref.current could be undefined or null. And the reason for that is because it will start as null until it gets slotted into a ref and it gets picked up by the component, at which point the current value will be the component. But there's always a chance that if you don't render it, or if you know, there's if you do like a don't render this if a certain thing is, like let don't render is false. So if I do something like, we'll do it with the image button, don't render, what this does is if don't render is true, then it will render the image button. Otherwise, it'll skip this. You could also do the same thing with a ternary. And that's actually okay. Like if don't render is true, actually let's change that to do render. Do render is true, then the image button, otherwise null. But if do render is false, then this function never runs, which means this ref never gets set. So if I do lock button ref.current, that will be null. So honestly, it's probably better to do like hidden equals do render. Not do render. So that way it still technically renders, but it never shows up. So like the ref actually gets assigned the way that it should. But that's why you always throw the question mark dot on there. It's a safety thing. Let's do the max, get max value, and I'll default that to 1. So this is actually a good use case where I might want on change actual. And the reason for that is because handle input commit will only fire when the user does an input. But here I'm setting the value. If I did on change actual, it would fire even though I'm setting it programmatically instead of as by actual human input. So, but of course you could always just do this. In this case, it's the min and the max. So I've got max, min, and it just sets the value. So let's see what else I want to throw in here. Ooh, yeah. Let's just throw vertical box in here. Sure. Some other components that comes with the UI stuff. Pattern input is a text input that takes a regular expression. Yep, I need a pattern. And that's going to need a regular expression. We'll get to that in a second. And let's say I want to do a color. So this could be A to F, 0 to 9. And I want that to repeat 6 times. And I've made that cap insensitive. So this is a custom component that I have written and thrown into my library that basically does validation. Let's do on valid commit equals, we'll just, and this is LPV. And on invalid commit, we can do the same thing and do console.log. Ooh. We'll reload the script. and it takes a hex color. And it fires the invalid. So that's a regular expression input. I'm not going to teach you how to do regular expression because I'm not entirely sure that I really understand it all that well, and I've been using it for years. Let's say... Actually, you know what? I know what I can use here. Let's do... What are some of my other components that I've got here? I'm having trouble remembering. Pattern input. I've got tabs. I've got accordions. Let's do an accordion. Alright, what is it complaining about? What do you need? Title. Badoop. And it's just a way to hide and tab content. It uses a checkbox internally because that's a convenient way to save state, and it looks okay. So that's a nice way to... Let's do accent color equals... Probably be... Oh, that's... No. 862. Ugh. sRGB space. That's better. Sort of. I'm probably going to rewrite this or create another variant that doesn't use a checkbox and just manages the state internally. But yeah, that's the accordion. Let's do tabs. Tabs is fun. Is it title or titles? I think it's titles. It is titles. Let's call it alpha, beta, and Charlie. And then we're gonna do... I need 3 boxes, so let's actually just do 3 horizontal... Well, let's just do text. Because they're gonna be... I've got 3 titles, which means I've got 3 tabs, which means I need 3 pieces of content. So this is alpha, beta, Charlie. I'll just refresh that real quick. And we got a tabbed interface. There's a couple other things in here. You saw the modal already. Got a couple variants of that, like frame or whatnot, which basically does this title bar options and body, but a little bit more manually. Like you have to be explicit about what menu you're passing in and what other things you're passing in. So, got pick buttons. That's another one I've gotten here. Okay, dynamic list. A dynamic list is a fun one. We're actually going to clear all this out. And I'm sure... Oh yeah, okay, we're good. Dynamic list. We can actually, it's a self-closing tag, that's good. And we need a populator function. The populator is a function. Wait, things. And we're going to learn about some more stuff about refs. So, const populate things equals, and it doesn't take any arguments. And what it needs to return is a bunch of JSX. In fact, it should return a JSX array. or one or more JSX elements. So I'm gonna do, let's do, well, let's do this. World.get world. Thank you. Get loaded packages. Get allowed packages. Dot map pkg. Return text pkg dot get name. Oh, I need to actually return that. Thank you. Okay, so we've got this dynamic list that runs this function whenever it needs to populate its contents, and it returns a list of texts that have package names, one for each allowed package in the world. So let's refresh this, come up here, and well, we've got our current package, right? And if I add another package and I, well, there's a couple ways we can do that. With a new function, there's a new add package, but we'll get to that in a second. But let's say I add a package. It's not going to work right this minute because there's no mechanism to actually repopulate. You have to re-trigger the populate. To do that, I'm going to pass in a ref. It's going to be a package list ref. And the package list ref is a use ref, and this is going to be a dynamic list ref, right? Cool. And this holds a whole bunch of functions that the dynamic list can use. So for example, let's say I add a button. Oh, you know what? That's not going to yell at me. There we go. Button that says refresh, and on click wanted to refresh package list. So I can write that function. Oop. And we can say package list dot ref dot current dot, well, it might be there. Oh, repopulate. And then it'll rerun this function and repopulate the contents. So it's a nice way to refresh it. So now, if I come in here and reload scripting, no, we still get this. Refresh doesn't do anything. But if I add a package, I'm just gonna add my sandbox package. Well, it didn't do anything, but if I hit refresh, now it shows up. Now, Plasticity actually added a new hook to do exactly this. So I can do global events dot on package added dot add. In fact, I can just tell it to do that. In fact, I wonder, can I even just shove that in there? Nah, it doesn't like it because it can't take undefined. And this might be undefined. That's fine. And we can actually get rid of this refresh button. So now, I reload scripting, and I object library and add a package. There it is, and it automatically refreshed because of that event. So repopulate is a nice way, or the dynamic list is a nice way to generatively add content. It could, in theory, take a single element. It doesn't have to be a list, but I've been using it as a list, so that's how I wrote the thing. But that's a thing that you can do with that. Let's see, what else do I have here? Pick buttons. Okay, we can do a pick button, why not? Let's ditch all this. pick buttons. Again, that is a self-closing element. And pick buttons needs an option. Now options needs to be, stop that. What does options need? Options needs to be a sure. Okay, it needs to be an array. Awesome. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. And let's do an on change handler that is on handle pick change. Const handle pick change equals okay, and it takes v number, which is the index, and a player. So I number and p player. Now the real way to do this would be options. Define it as a const. In fact, I can do it as const. Will that let me? It will. Dang it. Fine. I need to widen that type a little bit. So I can be like console.log options I. Reload that, come up to here, and there it is. Now you can have pick buttons. It's like a radio box button form. Pick images does the same thing, but with a series of images instead of buttons. It's like image buttons. So you can use URLs or whatever. And that's all the basic components that I have so far. Mostly because those are the only ones that I've needed to use so far. But yeah, this composition stuff is really powerful. Yeah. Okay, so my voice is starting to go, so I'll probably circle back to this whole controller thing at a later point when I start wanting to use a common library for things like loading and saving data in a more robust way than the vanilla way. So we'll come back to that. For now, ciao.